Welcome back to another episode of Showing Up For You. I'm Shon.
I'm Jasmine.
You guys, we are so happy to be back. Season 2 is just a whole another level of personal invasion, I would say. Personal invasion. Yeah. But before we get into today's topic, I just want to say thank you for everybody that voted and contributed to our stories this week. So what we asked was, what was the most awkward but necessary topic to talk about as you were approaching a serious relationship? And what I mean by that is you've been dating for a while and you're like, I see this going somewhere. Definitely might not be first date conversation topics, but when you do find that person and you're like, I think that I want to really talk about the things. And so we either said the family drama, so family toxicity, right? Like that, you might want to prep somebody for if you invite them over for that first Thanksgiving.
Right. The stress.
Or, what was the other one? Pregnancy brain.
Lovers.
Oh my God. Okay. Past lovers. Pregnancy brain is so, I swear, is a thing. I was like, I know. I'm serious about this. Okay. So past lovers or past experiences, intimate experiences, because those are important too, And the reasoning for that question, I would say for me, is because as we approach this next, so not this episode, but next episode, we have so much going on in that episode about what happens during that first stage of a serious relationship. Me having been through that, and then Jasmine potentially going through, what that might look like. Y'all, there's so much that was not in the cute little relationship books. No. There's so much that we're not, you know what I mean? And me and my husband did premarital counseling. And that made me feel naked. It was really uncomfortable, but I'm so happy. You know what I mean? So I said all that to say, we just can't wait for you guys to tune into this next episode, because there are so many things I don't think that I was told or talked to about when considering a serious relationship. And now that I think about it, me and my husband this is our 10th year being married, right? And I'm so glad that we talked about past experiences. I'm so glad that I was like, okay, let me lay out the family tree before you think I'm crazy.
Right.
And
I promise you I'm normal. It's fine.
And then, and even if not, he knows, he then could understand this is why she does things a certain way, right? So for me, it was like, hey, I need to let you know how my family addresses these kind of things, or how we celebrate these kind of things, or how we, or why this isn't spoken of as frequently. Mm-hmm. That way, when there comes a time in our marriage that might trigger me or might make me feel a little uncomfortable, he can revert back and go, okay, she did say that this is how she grew up and this is something that she has a hard time addressing. Not that I'm clamming up about it, but that he understands the root of it. And then he can say, okay, I know how to address her this way.
Right.
So I'm excited about that episode. And we just mainly are appreciative that you guys chimed in. And it was 50-50.
I couldn't believe it.
Right?
We were texting about it, and Shon had sent me a text and she was like, you need to vote. And I was thinking about it all day. I was like, oh, how am I going to vote? Which side am I going to go to? And then by the time I got around to voting, it was 50-50. And I was like, I'm not voting. I'm not going to be the one who splits the middle. Absolutely not.
Okay, so then you got to tell us what you would have voted.
I would have voted. I know. So here am I having to expose myself on camera. But if I would have voted, I think that the one I would have led with first is the family drama.
Yeah.
Because I think that family drama, in my personal opinion, I'm not going to expose all the things we'll talk about in the next episode, but family drama is what gives most insight as to how you as an individual operates in general. You know, past relationships, it's how relationally you operate, but I got to know how you operate in the world. So
right.
That's what I would have voted for. But I was like,
Oh my God. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then you also brought up something in a story that was quite interesting. Do you want to tell us about it, Jasmine?
I did. I shared 7 of my red flags, which was, a little, I won't say that there was regret involved, but I'm like, dang, I'm really showing my true colors here, so that made me very nervous. But, last episode, if you guys haven't had an opportunity to go listen, we really encourage you to go listen to the last one, because I shared a little bit about some of my red flags and how they operate in my life, but the ones that I ended up sharing on our Instagram story were just ones that I wouldn't say I operate in these red flags whatsoever, but they're just like things and that I know come up in my life and don't have the most positive impact, but definitely ones that as we'll talk about relationships in the future, things that I have to address. So I'm really excited to unpack those and definitely want to know if some of them resonate with you guys, and just know my list is longer than the 7. So if you got more, let me know as well.
But you're right. Those are important things, because when we do get into a serious relationship, as we're trying to heal from those and as we are trying to decipher how to make those into positives, you'd want your person to understand this is something I'm struggling with, and it's not an attack on you. It is something that I am trying to not normalize or something. You know what I mean? So anyway, we're not going to give it all away because we're going to talk about something different. Yes. But next episode, we are going to go there. Yeah. So,
stay tuned Jasmine. For that. I wanted to talk about something this week that I am, what's the word, drowning in.
Oh my God, that's dramatic. Tell me more.
A little bit. Me dramatic? No.
Am I the drama?
But right, me, is I the drama? But I've been thinking about this word disappointment and what disappointment means. In my own life, I think that I've been in a season of life recently that I'm able to decipher what I'm disappointed in much easier, than I have been in the past. And so I just wanted to talk about what does it look like, or what does it mean to have different seasons of disappointment in our lives, and kind of where does that stem from? I don't think that anybody growing up just outright said this is disappointment and this is what it means. So it's where do we end up getting this concept of what disappointment is in our life, and how do we move forward from that? How do we cope with it? It's a loaded question, but that's just something that's really been heavy on my mind as of recently.
Wow. I really feel uncomfortable with that question. So thanks for that. You're drowning in it, and this is the part where she pulls me down with her, and I feel like this isn't very life-saving, but whatever. Disappointment is something I struggle with too, and I like to think that it had to come from somewhere. I think the struggle is it could have come from our childhood, where we felt a need to please a superior or an authority figure. It doesn't always have to be your parents. It doesn't always have to be the people in your life. It might be a teacher. In your family, it might be a teacher. I don't know. But I think it can root from someone made you feel small about not being enough, right? That's not everybody's story, but that's where I would get it from, because disappointment comes from somebody's opinion of you. And then whether you reflect yourself, or I guess relate yourself to disappointment, meaning I'm disappointing myself. You had to get the idea from somewhere. Yeah. But as far as it, I don't know. It's such a big thing in my life. I'll just speak for me, because it can come in different places. And so I've had to figure out how to fight it off. Golly, I've had to figure out how to fight it off since, oh my God.
Right? When you sit and think about disappointment, Like, and it's something until, like, you know, prior to this topic, like, and so the reason I'll tell you why I brought it up.
Okay.
I'm in a process, you know, as you know, and I'll just share with people. I was in an interview process about getting a position. One I was really excited for. I felt like it was on the way to my dream job. Like, it was my dream internship. And I made it all the way to the end, and I got rejected. And I was disappointed, you know, which is like, what's a normal thing. But then there was an occurrence of other events that happened afterwards that led me to the thought of, like, where did disappointment in my life come from? Like, where did these feelings, you know, come from? Why is it that I deal with disappointment in this way, you know, rather than, you know, in a different way? And so it's just, like, really hard, because when, like, I had to sit and think back about it, I was like, shoot, this goes back much farther than I thought. But then also it has looked different in, like, different moments in my life. So, like, when I was younger, I would get disappointed when someone wouldn't show up for me.
Physically or mentally?
Mentally, emotionally. Okay. Well, and physically, right. I guess. But, like, it was more the, like, mentally, you know, emotionally, having somebody, you know, show up for me and be present for me. And then in response to that, later in my adult life, I'm, like, hyper present for people. Yeah. Almost like, dang girl, like, chill out, like, we get it, you're here, like, okay. we got it, chill. And, like, so that's kind of, like, how I guess, responded to disappointment when I was younger. And then, you know, moving into, like, 18, starting to go to college, all of those things, I began to be disappointed in myself based on, like, my progress. Wow. You know, so where I was at in school, you know, where I was at amongst my peers, you know, amongst my teammates, all of these things. And so, like, I saw, like, disappointment look different in that season of life. And then, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Here's what I noticed. Like, it started off with people being disappointed in you. And then you were like, I'll take the baton and I'm going to be disappointed in myself. Like, you took that, you, like, You initiated, like, you took that upon yourself. Let me take responsibility. And did the job for them. And I think that's something we all go through. You just said it, I think, more clearly, or maybe I heard it and it, like, clicked a little differently, you know, but it had to start from somewhere. And somehow, like, you thought that was an appropriate step in progress. Right. Like, you accepted that junk and was like, I'm supposed to. Disappointment is natural. Right. And it is necessary. Like, right. Like, it's supposed to be something in my everyday life. It's supposed to depress me. Yay. Just fail together. Like, that's what you do. Like, that's what you know? Yeah. And isn't it funny that it's like, there's a trick of, like, I can see why people think disappointment somehow helps us progress or somehow, like, means you're doing something right. But I also just feel like disappointment can be, like we can change that around. Yeah. And actually make it, like, a moment of correction rather than, like, something so negative. You know what I mean? Because you talking about it, like, being like, oh, a thing, you know, when you grew up and then now you're doing it to yourself. I don't want to do that to my kids. Like, I don't think I've said to them, I mean, they're only 5 and 6, right? But, like, I've never been like, I'm so disappointed in you, or I'm disappointed in you. I might say, hey, like, this is how I would handle it going forward, because that didn't seem very helpful to what you want to do. You know what I mean? But dang, like, I could see how that, like, something negative can be so accepted in our lives, and then, like, we take it on and make it a normal thing. Right. Anyway. And then it's, like, moving forward in your life. I mean, maybe just in my experience, but now it's, like, it's always on me. Disappointment is always on me from here on out, which is, like, that's absolutely not true. Like, I was looking through just, like, some of, like, old things that I had written, and back in 2018, it was 2018 or 2019, I had written, like, I was disappointed in the effort that I put in last year. And, like, and I just found it. And I sat there and I was like, who told you that the effort that you gave wasn't good enough in that season of life? Right? Well, yeah. Like, who told me that whatever I had to offer back in, you know, 2018, 2019, that wasn't good enough? And so we put all of these, just like you mentioned, negative things on ourselves
For what? For what?
And it had to be according to somebody's standards, or you translated your standards upon somebody else's. Because I look at like even now, we're in the beginning of 2022 and it already just looks like trash. But like the last 2 years, so sorry guys, but the last 2 years have been crazy for all of us. And literally if we insane. Really sat and threw a pity party for ourselves and said, the effort that you put in last year, like, first of all, there are so many people that thought last year was going to go great, or the year before it was going to go bananas. You know what I mean? Like, for us, we bought a house right before it all happened. And I'm so thankful for timing, first of all. But, like, when I look at all the dreams that we wanted to, like, come true, all the goals we wanted to accomplish, all the job opportunities that we were just like, this is going to be great. Yeah. And then it didn't happen. We could have sat at the end of 2021 or 2020 and then said, oh, I'm so disappointed in the effort. Doesn't matter what you would have put in. Right. The pandemic, the panini, like, it would have like smashed you anyway.
Mm-hmm. It did not care about your hopes and dreams. It did not at all.
It did not care. So I'm like, I guess that showed me, like, no matter how much you beat yourself up or how much you think you should have done or could have done, life is going to, like, throw some reality at you. Yeah. And then what? Right.
It's like
we're our worst enemies here.
We really are. And it's so hard because, like, I know for me, I was thinking, like, how is it that I define disappointment? And, like, for myself, I think everybody has a different definition, and I hope that they do. Yeah. And, like, mine ultimately was, like, disappointment is a result of failed expectations. Whoa. And whether that's expectations I put on myself, expectations that I put on others, it's just, like, ultimately a failed expectation. But, something that you had said that has really given me, like, a new perspective on it is that failed expectations are not necessarily a bad thing. It gives an opportunity, like, for correction or for you to pivot and go a different way. Like, I know that I had written down, like, in my notes before, like, getting ready to talk about this, like, if an expectation has failed, that can still lead you to really great things in your life.
Absolutely.
And to see it that way, because it's like there's so many words that, we think just have this big negative, like confrontation. Mm-hmm. When people see the word confrontation, they're just like, big red flag, the X around it, like, do not, like, it's a big negative thing, but it's like, that's not true. And I think the word disappointment falls, within that category as well. But if you're able to look at it from a different point of view, it's not a bad thing, and it could lead to growth. It could lead to better things in your life. Like, you can pivot and go somewhere else, really.
You can. Redirection isn't always a bad thing. Yeah. And it doesn't mean, it doesn't always mean it's a failure. Like, if there's disappointment, you know what I mean? But like I said, like, we were talking about correction, just looking at it like, okay, whoever's expectation it was, for me, I've grown out of other people's expectations. My husband married who he married, and I'm going to be who I'm going to be. Listen.
You're going to love me regardless.
I'm the same today, yesterday, and forever.
Come on, Jesus.
Let me stop. Okay. But the point is, like, I gave up on your expectations. Yeah. You, the general, whoever, right? But, like, I also think that this whole, like, idea of disappointment, whether it's me, whether it's, like, the expectation of somebody that's now, 35, what should be happening or whatever, I'm more comfortable with saying, not a disappointment. I see what you think I should have done, but this is where I did all that I could do. Me knowing that I'm not waking up ready to, like, not do my best, right? Right. Me knowing that I'm not, like, approaching my marriage ready to screw it up, or me knowing that I'm not, like, waking up like, how can I screw my kids up today and help their therapist, get a Bentley, like, right. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not doing that. So knowing that my intentions are always 100%, even on my tired days, even on my, like, I feel like crap, and you're gonna get some peanut butter and jelly for, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I'm not, even on those days, it's just one of those, like, I know that I'm doing all that I'm capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't feed into your expectation. I have to look at this like, okay, this is who you are when you're dog tired. Knowing that, okay, who are you going to be when you are energized and you had a good night's rest?
Yeah.
So that correction or that idea of just observation is more helpful than feeling like because mom guilt is real.
Mm-hmm.
Such a bad mom. I didn't take my kids outside today. I'm such a bad wife. I didn't get to make my husband make my husband lunch, or I didn't get to,
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, like, that's real. Like, men too, like, go through that where it's like, because society said I should be doing A, B, and C, I now feel small because I didn't get to do it, or because I'm not married by this time, or because I decided not to have kids, or because I went for the job instead of the relationship. Like, there's so much, and it all comes from somebody's opinion and how we are kind of like subtly trying to abide by that opinion.
I feel very seen.
It's you brought this up, so I don't even know what you
like.
This is not my topic.
I'm just like, dang, everything that you're saying.
You wanted it.
I did. I asked for this. I needed this reality. Honestly, this episode is for me and my reality check. Thank you guys for being here. We're very grateful. Right. Jasmine's therapy session with her auntie. Oh my God. Just kidding. Kind of. But I am curious to know, like, what is the space that you experience disappointment in the most? Do you have a space?
Yeah. So if you call it a disappointment, like I said, because I think that there's so much yes. Okay. The closest thing to disappointment I experience is my marriage. My marriage. And it's not even from my husband, it's from me. And I guess I assumed it would be like motherhood, but like, it's not motherhood, because I felt like kids are so forgiving. Kids are so intentionally like seeing the best. Like, they'll cry over something and then 2 seconds later they have no memory of, you know what I mean? And then they'll, and they think you're the best thing in the world. Like, the other day I was in a bathrobe and my daughter was like, oh, I love how fancy you look in this robe. And I was like, okay.
I love her. Just affirming, right?
Like, they see the best version, and I'm just like, I'm just trying to get to the linen closet.
And I'm just comfy covering up.
Right. You know what I mean?
I'm fancy though. Okay.
So like, they see like the best version of you. Mm-hmm. The reason I say my marriage is because I noticed, or I realized, my husband and I made a promise at the altar and chose to like give our best every day. We are voluntarily here. Like, we are voluntarily combining finances, work ethic, making humans, building dreams, breaking generational curses. We're voluntarily here. Yeah. Like, nobody was like, hey, you know what I mean? Right. Like, you better, there was, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so when I think about that, when I think about like, no matter what we go through, no matter what happens, we are intentionally choosing to be here. When I have my bad days of I'm frustrated and I need my space and I said it the wrong way, or like, you didn't do the thing I needed you to do, and me not allowing him to be human.
Yeah.
Or just being disappointed in like something I expected to happen this time in our lives. Mm-hmm. Like me, where that plays this like strong role is like, I almost like end up whipping myself, because how dare I speak this about a guy that like chose me every day, continues to choose me. So like, I'm beating myself up for nothing, because he's still here. He's gonna be here.
Right.
We both made this promise, but I'm choosing to like discipline and beat myself up because I'm like, it's like I'm attacking or sabotaging my own happiness. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Wow.
Like, it's horrible, because I will be human and I'll do something human and I'll have a real emotion and a real like upsetting moment in my life, and then like somehow find a way to attack myself because how dare you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yet I'm giving him all the space, but I'm like, how dare you be this way to him?
Yeah.
Right? And that's where the disappointment comes. He's never been like, you are not the woman I married. Like, he's never, you know what I mean? He's never done that. Mm-hmm. It's me doing it to me, and then, like, he pretty much ends up paying for it. It's self-sabotage. Yeah. And I could stop if I, like, realize, like, you're gonna be human. Mm-hmm. Nobody is, like, watching your marriage on a reality TV show. This is the real stuff I didn't learn about. This is the stuff we prepared for in premarital counseling. Yeah. But, like, I am disappointed in myself for being human in this thing we call life. And it's hideous.
If I had a mic to hold in my hand for her, I would have dropped it, thrown it across the room.
But does it make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And it does, honestly, no matter what relationship status you're in, I think that everybody can resonate with so much of, like, what you just said. Like, as a single person who is wanting to be married one day and to mm-hmm. prepare for marriage, I'm taking so much of what you said of, like, dang, I could self-sabotage in that moment. Like, that's not something that I would even think about. And I hope that, like, for anybody who is married and if you're going through things, I'm like, I'm sure you can take all the dimes too. Mm-hmm. I'm like, passing game, but, like, it's just, like, it's so mind-blowing how easy it is for us to, like, ruin good things for ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, that's something that just, like, rings so loud in my ears. Like, you continue to say, like, and I know that about my uncle. Like, he chooses you every day. You choose him every day. Mm-hmm. And it's, like, to just attack yourself for being just you, having a bad day. What? Right. Like, when you say it out loud.
It sounds silly. Yeah. And I know better, right? But, like, reality is, like, we grew up how we grew up. Mm-hmm. Society is saying what society is saying. Yep. And we have the people in our ear that we have in our ear. And that's why it's important to create those boundaries. It's important to, like, decipher, okay, is this my reality or is this, like, the actual real thing that's going on? Mm-hmm. Or it's important to check in and say, like, are we good? You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, and that's why I say, like, there's never been a time he was like, golly, I just can't believe I made this decision. Right. And so he loves you. Now, like, it's like, oh, wow, like, now I know it's me. Yeah. But when I do it to myself based off of the way I was raised or what's in my ear or whatever, and I'm not, like, checking in with myself, giving myself space or grace to be human, yeah, I'm self-sabotaging, which then is sabotaging my marriage because he's like, whatever war you got going on with yourself. Right.
I was not there.
I wasn't there. Like, what are we doing here? Right. Why are we angry?
Right. How did I get here? Because I was not present for that other conversation.
Right. Over there. Anyway, but what about you? As I unload, like, is this really my topic or yours?
This is,
like,
right. This is our
Where do you see disappointment in your life?
Everywhere. Just kidding. Oh, sorry. I'm bringing all the drama today. I do want to make a note. I desire to have those kind of disappointments. I know it sounds weird. Bear with me. But I am single. And I desire to have someone in my life who fights for even my moments of self-sabotage, who fights for me, who sees the better part of me, and who, like, chooses. So, like, if you are a single woman like me, I hope that you aspire to those disappointments too. Because for me,
if any, that's
right.
Right.
That one feels okay because I'm not in it alone. You know what I mean? But I think that for me, I'm in a big me versus me season.
Whoa.
You know, coming off of I've been out of college for quite a while now, or, like, undergrad, I should say, where it's, like, more of the social aspect, and you're, you know, so easily surrounded by people to compare yourself to. Like, I'm thankfully, like, I feel like I've moved a lot out of that phase of, you know, making comparisons, you know, to others, but being, like, you know, in a moment right now for myself of, like, me versus me, I'm constantly, like, you know, kind of analyzing where I'm at and where my progress is. And, you know, I do have, like, when I read what I read earlier about, you know, I'm disappointed in my effort. I think that now I can realistically say what my effort looked like. Whereas back in 2018, I couldn't tell you what my effort looked like. I didn't have that kind of self-awareness. And so like at this moment in my life, if I feel disappointed in my effort or disappointed in whatever it is I gave, I can recognize like that is where I didn't give enough. That is where I didn't show up for myself. That's where I wasn't present for myself. That's where I chose somebody else over choosing me, you know, because I think that like the direction that my life, I hope for it to go, I should say, like who knows where it's going to go, you know, could go anywhere at this point, which is great. Like I love to know that I have that option, but you know, for the way that I want it to go, I'm able to hopefully make corrections, you know, and to be able to make pivots and also like not be so hard on myself. Like you know, when I got rejected from the position that I wanted, I ended up sitting with it the whole weekend and really didn't say much about it, even though I was beating myself up on the inside. Didn't say it like I like casually mentioned it, and then I was like, all right, the day's starting, it's time to go. And so I looked, and then like I went about the rest of the weekend, had a meltdown about it after the weekend, and I'm able to look back at it now and say I was disappointed that I wasn't present for myself.
Wow.
I was disappointed that I didn't let myself feel those feelings. It's like, how is it that, you know, I could sit here on this podcast and tell people like sit with your feelings and feel all of your things,
right.
You know what I mean? Which is like, it all sounds good and I do believe that, but I didn't do that for myself, and that's my reality. And so that's like something that I know that in this me versus me moment, and you know, that's where I see it show up, you know, most for myself, is that like I think that I just hope that, you know, in those self-aware moments, I'm able to be present the way that I need to be, or recognize like what is needed, you know, in those moments.
That's okay. That's hard. And that's, okay. So you are right. I remember what you're talking about. And it's like, how dare you not give yourself that space?
Mm-hmm.
You would give me space and you would help me create that space. And it just goes to show like we are like, that's self-sabotage. You know what I mean? Yeah. Instead of you saying, okay, I got to sit with this. Why didn't I? Do I understand why? Was it just naturally just not me? Mm-hmm. Is there something better out there? Like, you know what I mean? Is this something I should be like, all right, not for me? Or allow myself to like have a glass of wine and say, all right, like let's reassess and see how to, approach this differently next time. Like, what you didn't give yourself that space. Mm-hmm. And that sucks because now you're teaching yourself that you don't deserve to like have those feelings when when they happen. Right. And that's hurtful for me to hear because I do think you deserve that space and I want you to, but then you said in the beginning of this, like in the beginning of what you're talking about, it's like even going over what you were talking about your past year and how you, I guess, observed your disappointments or observed your effort, effort. Yeah. You give yourself like, you know how to give yourself space. You know how to give yourself like that like, hey, this is what I did. This is what I could have done differently. But it's like, dang, in the war zone, you sound like you are your worst person. Mm-hmm. And I guess my question is like, how is anybody else allowed, or how is anybody else capable of giving you that space if you're not giving yourself that space? Like, how would you receive it? Because who am I if you are not being nice to you? Like, how would I be able to be inside your head, Jasmine? Like, how would I be able to compete with you being disappointed in yourself? And I'm over here like, hey, it's okay. Right. There could be something else. Like, how you're not just like beating yourself up. Now you're beating everybody because it's impossible. Can't help you. There's nobody who can win in that situation. Well, yeah, and like, so it's like we can't even. Yeah, we can't help you. Like, I don't even know how to help you. I could try. Right. But like, I don't even know how to be present. Mm-hmm. If like I'm saying all the good things, but you're like still telling yourself. Right. It's like it's such it's a really dangerous space to be in because it's like also I think that if I'm honest, and this is just my opinion, that I think that
it's easy to believe that somebody can beat this. Like, honestly, but it's not true.
That's 24/7. Like,
right. And I don't think that's true whatsoever, because I know that, like, I've had moments where people have affirmed me or given me, like, the nice words, and it's like a, what's the word? It's like it's a temporary BandAid.
Okay.
So it's like all you're doing is continuing to find temporary BandAids, but your body is the one that heals that, not the temporary BandAid, you know? So it's like, if you continue, like, to seek out those things, like, if you want to feel committed to finding those temporary BandAids for the rest of your life, I mean, to each their own, but you know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, to get that healing, or to get that peace of mind you want, to get that correction, to get, you know, to dream of a new future for yourself. Like, you have to be the one. Your self-talk has to win every single time, because that also teaches other people in your life how, like, you know, something I always do with you, like, I'll tell you, like, okay, this is how I hype myself up, or like, this is, you know, or I'll sit here, I will gas myself via text message to my auntie and be like, I'm that girl, y'all forgot. It's ridiculous, but it's, like, cute though. But so cute. I think that for me, it's helpful, because I'm like, I need to exude this confidence, because when you bring confidence in my life, I can sit there and believe it, because I'm believing this about myself, because I said it first. Yep.
Yeah, I could actually agree, instead of having to be convinced.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, because it's like, if somebody has to convince you, man, about yourself, just say that out loud to yourself. Yeah. You're convincing me about me.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother episode on, like, insecurities. Yeah. Like, don't go there unless you're ready to go there. Because it's true. Like, we all go through it. We're all like, you know, the way that, you know, people respond when they're like, oh, you look nice. And it's like, somehow you find some way to, like, minimize that compliment. Like, oh, I just threw something on because I just was, you know what I mean? It's like, right. It's just like, thank you. Right. You know what I mean? But anyway, we're not going to go there. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. That's a big thing of, like, what I am going through right now, because I know that, like, I think that the older that I'm getting, my self-talk is becoming a little more challenging, because it just looks different, you know, for myself. And it's, you know, rooted in different things, or things that I want to accomplish, or, you know, I can imagine that. So I think, like, that's just, like, I just share that, because that's what I'm going through right now. Hopefully some people can resonate. Something that you mentioned the other day, you were talking about grace, and I would love for you to talk about that a little bit, about giving yourself grace.
Oh God, I feel like that's such a I don't remember, but, like, I don't.
I got you. You said, what?
I'm like, what did I say? Because when she
like, I'm like, I honestly, like, when we're texting or we're calling, I will sit and I will be like, hold on, I'm gonna let you finish your thought, but let me write this down real quick. So I have, like, a whole notes dedicated.
Oh my goodness.
But something that you had said, I thought I had written it down, but maybe not. Oh yeah, at what point did you realize that you needed to give yourself more grace?
Oh God, now I remember. Jesus.
Socked me in the throat when you said it.
Oh my God. Lord. So I think that there had to be a moment. It didn't happen until, like, Jesus. I feel like everything happened in college for me. But I guess realizing, like, I'm not able to, like, succeed or, like, move forward without other people's approval. Like, that's where I think, like, my version of disappointment came from. Like, you're supposed to do this at this age. You're supposed to have this figured out. You're supposed to have this done. And I was getting those things done by any means. You know what I mean? And then there came a time when, like, I just was tearing myself up. Like, I looked good to you, but I was, like, breaking myself down. Yeah. Not in a way of, like, break yourself down and build yourself up. Like, it was like, I'm broken and I'm hurt. And and I had to come to kind of like this conclusion of like, what if I didn't care what you thought? Like, what if I didn't care or wasn't concerned with like how you think it should go? And sadly, that came with eliminating relationships, and that came with boundaries, and that came with negative opinions of me.
Yeah.
But I want to say it was college, or like, you know, like late college, where I just had to go, okay, like, I can't need your approval. I can't need, you know, society's approval anymore.
Right.
I know that we all have different paths and we can all succeed differently. But it just had to be, I don't know, like I said, I was doing things for other people. I wasn't motivated by like where I thought I should be. Dang, like I just wasn't motivated I wasn't. I knew I was supposed to be out of the house by a certain age. I knew where I was supposed to go next. I knew that I was supposed to take care of things myself. I knew that, you know what I mean? Like I struggled. Like I knew where I was supposed to be according to somebody else, you know what I mean? Or according to what was around me. And I don't know, I just was so broken. I was so in a bad spot of, I guess just to be a little open about it, is like I was in school with the jobs, with the dean's list, with all the things, but I was like living out of my car and struggling to pay for things for school. Yeah. Even though I had the 2 jobs, I was not in a position where I could get the help that I needed, and I was like I wasn't in a good place, but I was exceeding your expectations, right? You know what I mean? So how dare I be, you know, disappointed in me, mm-hmm. But it's like, I'm not doing good. Yeah. And so it was kind of like this turnaround of like, okay, Lord, like, how do I do for me? You know? Yeah. And so that was my heart transition. You're going to turn this episode into something else. Showing up for giving your stuff, but it's like, but then that's the hard thing, right? It's like, what is it? What would it take for us to give ourselves the grace that like God gives us, or that our closest people give us? Yeah. Like, what would it take? Like, why is it that we have to fall on like the hardest of times, or why is it that we have to like go through these hard things to see ourselves as humans, and then say, wait, like I deserve to be forgiven for this, or I deserve to like take my time on this. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like it's. I don't know. That was such a transition for me.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. I know that every time like I hear that, I know that it impacts me like so much because I'm just selfish and I'm like, I love her and she's the best thing and she exceeds all the expectations always. And I'm just like, I just get so protective over you. But I think like it's so hard to just hear that. Because I think this happens with more people than we probably even know, is like we're so willing to break ourselves for others when just for them to say, my niece does this, my daughter does this, for people to just be able to take your name into rooms that you don't even stand in those same rooms with them.
Ooh. So that they can have that clout, so that they can, like, brag on you.
Right. But yet, they don't know about the things that you went through to uphold that unrealistic expectation that they put on you. Right. Or that, so that they can say things in rooms that they were not a part of. They didn't see the struggle. You didn't. Don't let me go there, because that'll be a whole nother episode.
This is what we do. This is what we do.
Every single time. But it just really is so heartbreaking. Like, you know, I think that grace, that's not how grace works. I just say all that today. It's like, that's just not how grace works.
And you, and you make a good point. It's like, I wonder if almost like we're just exceeding people's expectations for affirmation from them. Because you kind of just said it, like, they don't see everything. Like, they just get to say, you know what I mean? Like, they just kind of get to, like, you know, look at what this person is doing, and they get to brag on it. But, like, are they in the trenches with you? Like, are they, you know what I mean? And then, like, to be honest, it's not their fault. It's your fault for like thinking that you were literally born to exceed that guy's expectations or that woman's you know what I mean? Like, I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is.
Yeah.
I don't care who it is. When you really think about like the life you live and however you decide to live it, you can't get into heaven or like you can't get anywhere on somebody's coattail. It's gonna be you. You know what I mean? However, whatever you believe in, whatever that looks like, you can't do anything based off of, but I did everything that person said.
Yeah.
And like until that clicks, like, or I did what society told me to do. Mm-hmm. Like I like that now it doesn't make sense to me, but I was doing so that you could say, so that you could be proud of me.
Right. But it's like the opposite never happens in a room. You don't go in that room and say, I'm so disappointed that they didn't. If you did, it's just weird. It's like if you're gonna do one, do the other.
Mm-hmm. But, right.
Oh, and we digress.
But you know, you're right. Different stages. Because what you were saying even before, like offline, is like different stages of disappointment. They bring about like different things. Like we're now talking about how we're developed from it, but like we just have different disappointments. Like
yes, they're
just new disappointments.
Yep.
You know,
definitely.
Do you ever like consider what that looks like? I guess like what those stages, like how you would define each stage of disappointment, whether it's like a life stage or whether it's a season stage.
Mm-hmm. I would say it's probably a season stage based on like what my needs are. You know, in that season, like, because me personally, I defined it as like failed expectations, and so expectations that I have differ from season to season. You know, in my life, and I think that you know, right now, I can say like mostly, actually, honestly, even though I gave the example earlier about like, you know, the position that I was rejected from, I don't look back at that and I don't see it as a disappointment. You know, I see it as like I got through, went through 4 interviews. Lord knows if anybody's been through a 4-interview process, that's a lot and it is exhausting. And you're saying a lot of the same information and like starting to get annoyed by the 4th one. Like, let's be real. But like, I don't, you know, I had to see that my expectation was more of like, I'm going to reach for bigger heights than I would before, you know? And so it's like, if I'm, you know, if there's disappointment that's, you know, within that season, I expect it to come because you're going to get rejected from things. Things aren't going to go your way. You know, like, what are other things in my life happening right now? Like, how do I not expose all my things? But like, I'm in school and I'm getting my master's. And so like, I'm disappointed when classmates don't pull their weight because I expect you to pull your weight.
Why are you here?
Right? Or
if
like,
you're not gonna do the group project.
Thank you. I'm like, we don't need to send another email to the professor. Anyways, but you know, but also
tell me what's really on your mind, Jasmine.
I know. I'm like, as I have to do homework after this, my lord. But or even like, you know, I'm making a transition of like moving and things, and just like I've reevaluated my circle, you know, recently, because you had mentioned it earlier of like the people who are in your influence, they impact you a lot. And so, you know, just recognizing like, you know, what are my expectations in these, you know, circles, and like, you know, what is it that not in a way of like, how do I avoid being disappointed, but also like, how do I not care so I don't get disappointed? That's kind of a thing too in my life, in this season of my life right now.
That's a good way to look at it. Okay, so earlier we were saying, like Jasmine pointed out, I see disappointment. The way I see it is like, I'd rather it be a moment of correction. Whether it's your expectation or somebody else's, however you reason with that, it's just a matter of correction. This is a good time to say, maybe I could have done this differently. It doesn't have to appease you, but like, maybe I could have done this differently. You're saying like, let me like care less so that disappointment isn't even a thing. And I think that's actually relevant as well, because now, you know, we're looking at seasons of it. There has to be some kind of growth.
Yeah.
Right. So like us now having this understanding of what disappointment has done to us, what it has like brainwashed us into believing, and how we can like reiterate it in a more learning process or a positive way. Now I'm thinking like, dang, like, so then disappointment shouldn't even exist. Like, if we all kind of just did what we were supposed to do according to us, we wouldn't be concerned about, and it's not even an offense to like not be concerned about what other people are thinking.
Yeah.
But it just makes me, it kind of just begs the question, and you guys feel free to comment or leave a comment or inbox us as this episode airs. But like, how would you change the way that looks? Like, if you know that disappointment actually like leads or like redirects your dreams or your life, you know what I mean? Like, how would you redirect that? How would you deal with it? Or what would you call it? You know, because like I said before, you got mid-20-year-old men and women who are still holding on to what their parents want them to do. And even if they're not holding on to it, they know that now every time they approach a parent, they're nervous about how to tell them, I really don't want to do the thing you want me to do.
Yeah.
That is, there's cultural differences in that. There's religious differences in that.
Right.
I'll be honest, like, there were times that I wanted to just ignore people for telling me how to, you know, like we did a courthouse wedding, and then we had a wedding.
Yeah.
And, or we celebrated our wedding. Our reasoning for that was I was seeing people be financially like irresponsible with weddings just to throw a party. Like, I'm gonna be honest, just to throw a big party and feed everybody else. I don't know. And I wasn't in a position to, me or my husband were not in a position for someone to pay for our wedding. I'll say that. And so we did a courthouse wedding, and then we saved up, and then we paid for our wedding. And I remember getting judgment and someone calling my wedding fake.
Don't get me started.
Calling my wedding fake. Because
it was very real. I was there.
Right. So like calling my wedding fake because I did the courthouse first and saved up, and it was only like a 5 month span.
It wasn't very long.
Yeah, you're right. It was only a 5 month span. Like, it was literally like courthouse wedding 1 month, and then 4.5 months later was the celebration, right?
You still planned a wedding much sooner than most people do anyways.
Right? So, but like, I just remember the amazing feeling of like walking away from there and not owing anything. Like, we had pretty much, the wedding was paid off before before we even flew out to like have it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why don't more people do this?
Right.
But I remember being judged, and somebody really close to me like telling my wedding was fake, and telling me like, telling other people, you know what I mean? And so that's the kind of thing I dealt with. And I remember like, this should be a very happy day.
Yeah.
But I remember that being told to me, and just anyway. And so that was a disappointment that I let take so much space from me. And now that I think about it, I'm like, 10 years later, right? I'm like, why wasn't that person proud that like nobody had to contribute? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why wasn't that person like,
that they could just show up?
That's smart.
Yeah.
Like, because now I think about that, I'm like, I told you weddings are overrated. Like, if you can't, just go buy a house. You know what I mean? Right. Like, listen,
get a different
go to the courthouse, get the paperwork,
yeah,
whatever. Whatever you do is up to you. But in my opinion, I just regret taking that disappointment and like sitting with it. And so now I'm I'm like thinking like, what would it have looked like if I said to myself, Shon, this was an amazing idea. Like, me and my husband did say that because we obviously did it. It was awesome.
Right.
But like, this was such a great idea. Why would you let this authority figure, like, that their disappointment ruin your space? And I mean, now I can say that. Like, now I can redirect that. Now I could, like, if it ever happened again, or if somebody had a judgment, I can be like, get out of here.
Right.
But like, how are we learning from that? Like, not everybody is like having that epiphany later. Not everybody's having that revelation later. But like, has that ever happened to you? Like, I feel like it's just
don't drag me, okay?
I'm sorry.
No.
Jasmine's gonna like, she's
I am clearly contemplating my life. I'm just kidding. No.
But you get what I'm saying.
Yes. No, I entirely get what you're saying. Like, have I ever looked back in a moment where I was disappointed or
somebody was disappointed? You let like disappointment lead you, like I said, down a negative path. Like,
I am screaming because this hits way too close to my
no,
so much I can't stop laughing. I'm gonna get it together for this episode, I promise. Yes, there's an individual in my life who likes to indirectly point out how disappointed they are in me. I laugh because that's actually how I feel at this point, because it is funny
isn't
to
it silly?
me because silly I'm now. Like, I'm gonna say it. I have exceeded you at this point in my life. And I think that we need to celebrate that in your life as well. If you're watching, whoever you feel like holds this cloud over you, or, you're such a burden in their life or whatever, and they like to remind you how disappointed they are or how much, you should have done this, all of the shouldas. Think about your life, where you are in this moment, and think about their life, where they were at in the same moment. And
where
I'm
were
not
you 10 years ago? Well, you were right with me. You were going through it with me.
I was right there. I just wasn't like, I needed to mature a little bit, and I had to find my voice. But here we are, showing up for you 10 years later. You feel me?
You were right there.
I was.
We were in the little car, just like
we were. Y'all, we should tell the story about your wedding one day with some of the things, because we have story.
Yeah, we're not getting into that story right now, but that's rough.
That would be good. But I just say I'm not gonna give specific examples of my life because it'll be a laundry list, but I'm not saying that like comparison is something that we should always do, right? Because like that sometimes disappointment is a result of comparison.
Okay.
Yep. But in the situation of like what I'm talking about right now, like with this individual, they like to remind me of all of the just silly things that I've done, or what all the should have, you should have done this, you should have done this, why didn't you do this, why didn't you listen to me, all of these things. But I have to look at my life, and I have to remind myself that even if you were disappointed, I am not disappointed in myself, because I walked the path that I was supposed to walk.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, in my opinion, women I see in my circle and my age, we do not remind ourselves. A lot of it, I think, is cultural. Like we, see the way that we're supposed to respect elders in our lives and individuals in our lives and even friends in our lives. Like we're supposed to hold them, in these like sacred spaces where it's like, if I'm not respected in this space, why am I going to continue to try to make you proud? In result of not making myself proud, because I want to look back in my life when I'm older and say, I'm so proud that I said no, even if it hurt you, because ultimately it got me to where I needed to be today. So I know I did a lot of laughing earlier, but like I don't say that lightly, because I think that it's really, really, really damaging when you sit and you continue to let yourself sit in that disappointment from years ago still negatively affect you, with where you're at now.
You rocked me a few different ways, but I'm gonna just bring this one up for the sake of time. You said, you kind of just phrased it as like, oh, it's not necessarily okay to compare, ourselves when we're talking about like disappointment and like letting someone down, failed expectations. I disagree because I do think it's okay. You call it comparison. I call it validity. Here's what I think. When you go to a mechanic, do you just trust that since they started the job yesterday that they should be able to fix your car? You don't. You like to ask questions like, hey, how long have you been working? Or you know that this specific establishment has been open for ages, right? If a new coffee shop right now popped up on the corner, me and you, we might give it a minute to observe the traffic.
Boom.
But we not just gonna go and like give our special orders. Like we not,
no.
Right? So there are times that we need to address and consider the validity of the person contributing to our life.
Yeah.
So what I hear you saying is when someone made you feel this big or was disappointed in you because of something they felt you should have done, you stepped back and you exposed or considered the validity of that person. You looked at their resume and you said, how are you able to judge something that I'm about to go through that you've never even approached?
Yeah.
How is it? Would you give me marriage advice?
Absolutely. What's crazy is I was about to just say.
Would you write out my birth plan? You
Absolutely
would not.
No.
You would not.
Tell you how to raise your kids? No.
No. And here's the cool thing is I know she would never do that. And I know that anything that comes from her is coming from love and just wanting to support. But there are times I've been like, hey, something is going on that I know you don't understand. So I'm going to ask you to give me space. And she knows I can't contribute.
Nope.
To this, or she'll say, I'll listen, right? I'll listen. So even in a positive way, you can't help me.
No,
you can hear me.
Yep.
So when we look at like how we're letting people, just make us feel a certain way for not completing expectations. I wish I would have thought of that right now, because when I was talking about like my fake wedding, the person that had so much to say. It's never even had a what?
Get out.
Has never even had, a successful relationship for as long as I have had. Did not do things the way that I did them. Could not contribute and advice wise to what I've done from the age of 18. You know what I mean? So I'm 35. So when I look at it that way, I don't see it as a negative. I don't see it as you comparing somebody. I see it as just like if you went to get it, you went to a doctor. Fellas, if you went to a new barber, okay, you gonna look. You gonna check the validity. Women, when we get, when we check for new OBGYNs, we're like, how long you been practicing?
Right.
We got it. There's things you gotta know.
You've been recommended. Yeah, it's checking credibility.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
You're right. Yep.
So I don't see it as a bad thing, and I truly think that's something we all need to consider going forward.
Yeah.
When you feel like someone is putting disappointment on you or placing disappointment on your expectations that you are not able to exceed from their point of view, you got to check and say, okay, even if you have done all these things. Are you doing them right now in 2022 as we are like still going through a pandemic and now are you doing them? Is that, because there may be somebody trying to give you advice that has said, I've been through school. I graduated my master's. I've done all that. Did you do it in 2022?
Right.
When we were under a lot of stress as a nation? Did you?
Right.
Did
you did it when the world was open, when you could go out to eat with your friend. Like,
you did it when there was in-person classes and you could just get
right. I'm over here having to raise my hand via Zoom. Click.
You did it when technology wasn't the root of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is something to say about that. I think that's a great point, and I commend you. I think that's a great way to look at how we view are like kind of like held by, at a chokehold by people's opinions. Like,
yes.
We're just like,
yeah, definitely. I know that, as with this topic, that's the one thing that I've had to hold on so closely, because I let the opinions of others creep into my mind way too easily. Like, and it's something that I've always been like that. And so it's just like me thing. It's something that I've had to continue to grow through and work through. And so I know that I'm really grateful, because I have individuals in my life when I start believing, the lies or, the things in my head, I have people who call me out and who will bring out my receipts. Jasmine, you're this, you're this,
Mm-hmm.
you're this, you're this. They speak into who I am as a woman in this moment. And so I know that like coming out of this episode, I really hope that or encourage you to, if you don't feel like you have those people, ask somebody in your life that you're close to of like, I might be struggling with this. I need help. And can you tell me who I am? Can you help me see who I am? Because I'm struggling, not in the way, again, like not in the BandAid kind of way, but it's like I'm needing help to be reminded of who I am standing in these moments. Yeah.
And even, you know, we like actually said this like first episode of season 1, even if it looks like, or, you know, 2, but it's just like, even if it looks like you outwardly processing so you can hear yourself or writing it down, because I mean, we get in these conversations and you say something and I go, who's been on this earth longer?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh my God. But, you know, and trust me, we do talk about these topics prior to getting on and recording, and we write little things down and we process them. But then it's not until we talk about them like in front of you guys, you know, like in this way that we're sometimes something will click and we're like, wait. You know what I mean? And so that kind of thing, it is helpful to outwardly process. It is helpful to write it down. It is helpful because you might think that you have a successful life based off of something you did. And you might realize like, I'm not as happy as I wanted to be because I'm doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing according to. Right? And that might be fine for you, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I think our biggest takeaway is seeing it as a positive stepping stone rather than a negative way to affect your life.
Boom.
I think that's really it. But this was great.
Yeah. I love this conversation. I'm feeling
No, you don't love it.
much more at ease. She's right. I don't love it, but I know that
like,
I'm like, after that last 30 seconds of laughing I did, y'all, I hope y'all felt that. And if you're watching, you've seen it. But I feel so much more at peace, though, leaving this conversation and, you know, to be able to process this big, bad word, you know, that feels so scary, disappointments. But it's not scary. And it doesn't need to be.
Dang.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you guys for tuning in again. Like we said in the beginning, next episode, we're going to address some stuff we talked about on Instagram. So thank you for that. We do love when you guys DM us and leave comments. And we we love, we get personal texts from like friends and listeners.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God. You know what I mean? And so, I love it. I get a text, almost every episode from my cousin. And she's like, I'm listening to this right now. And I'm like, remember when this happened?
I love it.
So I love it because she, I grew up with her. She knows. I'm like, this is what I was talking about. It's great. And so we love that you guys get something from it. We also would love if you're like, that's not how that happens. And this is, tell us about ourselves.
Yeah.
But next episode is going to be really interesting. So keep the feedback on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Keep it all coming. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you have a moment, we are grateful to be in your ears. So thank you for giving us that space. But give us a like, give us a comment. Now that we're on YouTube, we love to see, all of those. And also, if you have a moment, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts because we'd greatly appreciate it.
Yes.
We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.